Hello, guys. Fight commentary breakdowns here. This is Zen-Dragon, aka Michael. Michael the G. His last name's actually G. It starts with a G, so we call him Michael the G or Michael G. Zen-Dragon, as you guys know, popular YouTube channel, and he is kung fu trained and he tests out his kung fu, pressure tests his kung fu a lot. So, Michael, aka Zen-Dragon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to mention he's in Denmark. He's in Copenhagen. So there's a big time zone difference between us. So if it looks like I'm a little tired, it's because it is quite late here or early, depending on how you get up, etc. But anyways, Michael, tell me about your martial arts journey. How did you get into Kung Fu from Denmark out of all the places?
Yeah, actually, ever since I was a kid, I was fascinated by the martial arts movies. I grew up in the 80s and I saw Kung Fu movies and Bruce Lee and Karate Kid, which first inspired me to try and go to karate classes. But my dad always told me that you'd have to break ice with your with your chops or break bricks with your forehead and stuff. So that kind of scared me off of it. And to this day, I still don't know whether it was something he actually thought, or we didn't have a lot of money, so perhaps he just couldn't afford the classes.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was actually 24 in 2008, that's when I got started with Kung Fu. And I just saw a poster. There's a Draw My Life video on my channel, which shows a lot of my life story and that exact moment as well, where I saw a poster and I just got inspired to try it out. And I feel pretty fortunate actually that I found the club where I got started, because it's traditional, but I would say more so semi-traditional. So it was a Kung Fu club where they both did a lot of old school training methods like Marbu and stuff, but they were also willing to have seminars sometimes with like a former student who transitioned into mixed martial arts, and there was a lot of sparring and openness to other styles as well.
Wow, that's awesome. And do you remember your first class? How did it feel?
It's so long ago right now, but I just remember it feeling somewhat awkward because prior to martial arts, I wasn't really into athletics or sports that much. And just being there, just having no idea what you're really doing. And I think a lot of martial artists start out that way. So I have this vague memory of not knowing what I was doing.
And when in your lesson / your journey did you start feeling like, okay, I think I'm starting to grasp what I'm trying to learn now?
I think it's been a gradual process, because to begin with, I started to learn a few things like some animal style patterns with blocks and strikes simultaneously and concepts like that, which I later found is also a concept sometimes used in Krav Maga, which I've also trained a bit. And just figuring out those basics, along with having pretty good flexibility to start out with. So being able to do that and to do some high kicks, I felt like I was a pretty competent fighter just after a couple of months. And then like maybe 6 months later or something, I realized that I had I had so much more to learn, and that I really was lucky that I didn't get involved in any real fight or anything at that point, because yeah, I just, over the 10 years, in some ways I've gained some confidence, but I also found out that I'm definitely not, I don't even feel as good right now as I did after 3 months. Because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, I guess.
Yeah, you mentioned something amazing. I think every martial artist that really is trying to improve all the time goes through that journey too. The more they know, the more they train, the more they spar, the more they don't want to get into a fight, because the more they see holes in their own game, and they're like, wow, I can't believe I used to get into fights as a kid even, right? It's like I know exactly how you feel. It's so great hearing it from you.
Yeah, it's whenever I get asked about do you think you could beat so and so and all of these things, my response is almost always just that I know for a fact that I could beat the prior version of myself, like the version a year or two before that.
Yeah.
And I know that that version could beat a prior version as well. So that's my goal, because sometimes it also depends on if you're having a good or a bad day sparring, but it's never good to feel too confident or certain. And it would be dumb as well, because if I get the sense that I can beat everyone, which isn't a sense I've been getting, then it would be because I've been training with the wrong people. Like I haven't been testing myself enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, I think context plays such a huge factor. Like, is it a type of sparring? Is it a fight? What are the rules and what's the environment? How do the styles match up? Because just because person A defeats person B, it doesn't mean that person A is overall the better fighter or more complete, but it also depends on, like Sun Tzu was talking about, with knowing the enemy's weaknesses. If your strengths match up against their weaknesses, then even a weaker opponent can beat the stronger opponent. And also, if it's self-defense, there's just so many things. Like, if you get into the situation, then if it could have been avoided, then that's already you already made a huge mistake, because there's both the legal implications, there's ethical implications if you have to do whatever's necessary and potentially really harm someone. And there's so many uncertainties. Like even someone like Mike Tyson could get struck from behind with a weapon or something in a street fight. So
yeah. So tell me about your channel, Zen-Dragon. What made you decide to put all this footage? And if you look at the very old videos on your channel, some of it was more like maybe like tricking / kind of just fight scenes. So when did you decide, let's upload some of my sparring sessions?
Yeah. I still try to mix up the content a lot and sometimes do fight scenes and stuff, but I especially have shown a lot of different types of sparring over the years. And you're absolutely right. It took a while for me to first show sparring. That was just a matter of logistics and like being able to meet up with someone both willing to spar and put it on camera and online, as well as having a camera person. And yeah, there's a lot of planning which is involved whenever I have to record sparring videos. And just with the growth of my channel, more friends have been interested in doing it. And I've also started to record more in bulk. So whenever I'm able to meet up with friends and record sparring, I tend to record 3 to 4 videos or something. So yeah, that's been part of it. And that's also why over the years I've sparred with many different people on my channel, but still it's a relatively small handful compared to the ones I've faced in classes and stuff where I haven't been able to record. Yeah.
So my question for you then is, how popular is martial arts in Denmark? You're probably the first Dane I've ever talked to in my life, I believe. So I don't even know, like, what do Danish people, are they mostly into HEMA? Are they into Viking martial arts? Are they into Glima? Are they into Kung Fu? What are they into?
I think there's a pretty broad range of interests once you get into this relatively small group of people who are into martial arts in Denmark. That's from my experience. So I'm a big martial arts geek, so I've had conversations both with some into HEMA, which is not that common in Denmark. I think it's like how it is around the world, as well as some Filipino martial arts and kung fu and karate and mixed martial arts. I think Brazilian jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts and Muay Thai and boxing, as well as karate, probably. Those are probably the most common martial arts here in Denmark, as far as I know. And like mixed martial arts used to be much more rare. Just when I got started on my journey, it was hardly even a thing, I think, as far as I knew. And over the years, that's become pretty popular. There's a lot of things you can train here in Denmark, like Krav Maga as well, and mixed martial arts. And we have a few UFC fighters, like Nicolas Dalby, who trains at the same gym where I've been sporadically training. It's been difficult now becoming a father. So yeah, it's pretty popular, but over the past couple of years, UFC and MMA has gotten more mainstream, especially with this. Not so long ago, I think it was last year, towards the end of last year, there was a UFC event here in Copenhagen, and that brought a lot of media attention to the UFC. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can train. Just one more thing. But there's also things I've been looking for and been unable to find. For instance, Savat. I wish I could train Savat here in Denmark.
Wow. And my question was going to go along this line, which is, so your base is Kung Fu, and I know you've been branching out, but what do you think is the main reason you're kind of still sticking as Kung Fu as your main base, right? There's all these different MMA types of styles in Denmark. Why do you think you really like Kung Fu as kind of the base, and then you add other stuff on top? Like, I know you've been doing jiu-jitsu and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's what I spent the most time on early on in my journey. I trained for 10 years, like formally with an instructor, and it took me 10 years to achieve my black belt in Kung Fu. So I just learned so much along the way. There was some of the stuff I learned was outside of class, meeting with other martial artists. There were a bunch of people who trained other stuff who showed up at the Kung Fu school and trained there. And then after classes, we exchanged ideas. But I've always had a love for Kung Fu, and also the art aspect of combat. Like, also the fighters I love, ones like Machida, and Machida is more of a, perhaps not the best example, because he's very much a strategic minimalist type of fighter. But traditional fighters like Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva, Sabit, and all of these guys, Yair Rodriguez. I love that creative approach to fighting. And so for self-defense, I would probably stick with some of the more basic stuff. Like from Kung Fu, it would be just tactics like gouging the eyes if it's available and stuff like that. And perhaps the elbows, which are in a bunch of styles besides Kung Fu. And all the Krav Maga stuff is very, very basic and brutal. I would stick to that for self-defense, but I just always loved trying out these cool moves like spinning and flashy stuff, and that goes well with Kung Fu. And I also feel that Kung Fu needs someone to represent the style. We've seen more and more over the years, but especially when I started with my channel, there was hardly anyone pressure testing Kung Fu against skilled fighters. And I'm certainly not at a level like pro fighters, and even some of the amateur fighters I've sparred with can sometimes kick my ass. But I've learned a lot of stuff along the way, especially from training with modern martial artists, because I can see how a lot of the traditional stuff definitely works, but it works only if you know how to set it up and if you pressure test it. And the same thing is true of any modern martial arts. Like if you were doing Muay Thai and all you did was to do some of the Muay Boran katas, or even just shadow boxing without an opponent, then you would not be prepared to use it.
Yeah. One thing that I think is so interesting is, you talk about elbows, right? And when I started training Kung Fu too, besides punches, blocks, and kicks, the next thing we trained were elbows. So it's interesting that people don't associate elbows in Kung Fu, even though I always used elbows. One of my favorite memories, because I started Kung Fu when I was really little, you mentioned this type of elbow, and then of course there's this type of up elbow. So the way we were learning the up elbow, just because again, Kung Fu very kind of like dance, like very kind of more about elegance, especially the type I was learning. We held a fist and we held a palm. So we were going like this, it's not really needed to be this, but we were going like this. So I remember a few of the students in my class, they were like, this kind of looked like you're holding a baby, like cradling a baby. So when we were practicing this move, a few of the people in our class were like, la 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 la, like singing a lullaby. And the Kung Fu teacher, Coach Feng, was like, stop going like this, okay? Stop pretending you're holding a baby. It's a move to hit someone. So there's a reason I remember that, because from the beginning, at least when I had legit Kung Fu training, like I had 2 legit Kung Fu teachers before some not so legit Kung Fu teachers. But my first Kung Fu teacher, elbows were a big part of the Kung Fu training. And so, so you mentioned, I'm so glad you mentioned elbows, because like even when you see so many of those Chinese martial artists nowadays, you barely see them ever throw elbows. And like, even when I got into so many fights when I was younger, I was always the one throwing elbows. Elbows were so important because I didn't know how to clinch, right? I never learned Muay Thai, so I didn't know how to clinch, but I knew if you got close enough, I'd be throwing elbows. So the elbows prevented a lot of like disadvantages in the clinch, because people who didn't know how to fight, of course, would want to clinch me because they didn't know how to kick. So they would come up close. When they went up close, I would elbow them.
Yeah, for sure. And like elbows, I think this is not just a Kung Fu thing, but it can also serve to block. Like you can do a block with the elbow and then continue. And so it's great for the close range. It's definitely a part of a lot of Kung Fu styles. And of course, sometimes when you're watching, you can't really see whether it's block or strike or what is the case. And where I was trained in Kung Fu, we also did this one at times. And we did both. And personally, I think the cons outweigh the pros of doing this, because it's for added stability, but you're using both hands, so you're more open. But I think with any type of martial arts that I've trained, it's always good to approach it with a degree of skepticism. And
I've seen Anderson Silva knock people out like this, right, with the up elbow. But if you're not Anderson Silva, usually it's harder. Like this up elbow is a lot harder, and there's a reason why in Muay Thai this is so effective. So like I don't think. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the Anderson Silva up elbow, I think he was standing sideways as he did it, because I think it was this type of thing, which you also saw only where he bent forward with Yair Rodriguez against the Korean Zombie.
Oh, that's right. He did that really crazy. Yeah.
But I think a lot of times it's just the way you stand. So the Anderson Silva type of elbow, it rarely comes into play because it's rare for MMA fighters to stand sideways.
Yeah.
But if you just deliver a kick and you're in that position, then if the person moves in, then it can really surprise them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of stuff you see in MMA and combat sports, it's a lot of what makes it work is sometimes the way they train it. Not just the technique itself, but the way they train it. Because I've been into MMA for a long time, and I remember back in the days debating with people about whether you could do any sort of spinning technique in the cage. Because I was debating this on Sherlock forums, and everyone seemed to believe that then the person will just move in and either rear naked choke you or suplex you. But it's a matter of distancing and knowing how to set it up and stuff.
Exactly. I mean, for those people who doubt the spinning stuff, even before the current batch of really cool people putting traditional martial arts in their MMA. I mean, Kung Lee, man, when Kung Lee did those spin kicks, man, nobody had anything. Nobody could take his back or do whatever. You know, his kicks were so fast. And like you said, you set them up. You don't just spin and kick. You set it up with a few, you know, shorter kicks or punches or something. And then you do the flashy one.
Exactly.
Wow.
And yeah, Kung Lee, along with Ehsan Shafiq, whom I think you know, you mentioned him in the video. Those were two of the guys who really inspired me early on in my journey to actually believe in the kicks and to try to figure out how to make them work against resisting opponents, not just kung fu trained ones, but different types of styles I spar with. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I think one of the videos that we've looked at on this channel was when you did the really cool Kung Fu fans and stuff. How do you come up with ideas like that? They're so neat, that they're so awesome. You know, you test out like really traditional cool weapons. Like there's one where you did hook swords versus Guandao. Like these are just interesting combinations that are rarely seen. I think even on Chinese social media, you really see stuff like this. So where do you come up with ideas like that?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, but I think I just like the concept of pressure testing anything I've learned. And even with the hook swords, I've only had very little training with them, but still when I found out that you could purchase ones available, I started to train some tutorials and I started to test it as soon as possible. And those sort of ideas, those have been something I've been wanting to do and especially record and share with others for such a long time. But it's just a matter of finding people who are also interested in doing it. And there's a lot of these type of weapons you can purchase online for sparring. So yeah. Even now I have like ideas for, I would love to record for like it's a type of self-defense sparring with 4 people, either multiple opponents against one or just everyone going at it. And it's just a matter of figuring out a safe way to do it, and then the logistics, which now that I'm a father, it hasn't become easier.
Yeah. So since we heard your son earlier and then you talked about how you're a father, let me ask you this. Do you want your son training in martial arts? And if so, when do you think you're going to get him started? Is it when he starts to walk or is it a little bit later?
Yeah, we'll see. I definitely would love to share that passion with him. And I have a feeling that probably that's going to happen naturally. But if he's into something else, then of course that's cool as well. The only thing I have is that I want to teach him some very basic self-defense, whether or not he's interested. It's just a part of his upbringing, because I think that's important. but I hope that he has a passion for martial arts, and if so, then he'll have a training partner in me. So, and then it's also very much up to him what kind of style he would like to get into. It's a shame I don't have them right here in front of me, but I purchased this thing, which is like a set of toy weapons, but they're like two sai of plastic and a mini nunchaku for kids. So once I haven't opened the box, but if he's interested in it when he becomes older, he's only 6 months years old. Then I'm gonna teach him some techniques with the mini nunchaku and stuff.
Wow, that's so cool. Does your girlfriend, wife, does she do martial arts?
No, she doesn't, but I've trained a little bit with her. So she's actually very much into yoga. And that's been beneficial for me because I've done not that much yoga, but I've done some yoga with her, and we've done a little bit of acro yoga together. So I feel like if our son is interested, then he can both learn some yoga and some martial arts, and we can all, the three of us, can perhaps do some acro yoga. We'll see.
Wow.
So, but
what do your?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. During the quarantine, I've actually just recently started teaching her some very basic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, I'm by no means an expert. I think you're probably at a higher level, even though you're not claiming to be at a.
Oh, no, my jiu-jitsu is so bad, man. But I appreciate that.
I have a lot of holes in my game, but I know some submissions I'm relatively efficient at least if it's not against a high-level guy. So I've been teaching her like triangle choke, head and arm choke, and guillotine choke, and gradually she's hopefully gonna learn a bit more during this quarantine. Yeah.
Nice. And I think it's great that you're teaching her that, because for women, knowing jiu-jitsu will make them much safer in life, because you never know, man. You got to learn how to grapple, because, this has been said many, many times, but if some guy's going to assault a woman, usually he's got to take her to the ground,
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy. I was going to ask you earlier, your buddies that you train Kung Fu with, do they watch your channel? Do they give you pointers? Are they cool? Like your Kung Fu club, are they all cool about you doing all this?
Yeah, they are, but I actually haven't spoken that much with them about it. They're all aware of the channel, but yeah, they're cool with it. The only thing was that my shifu wanted to make sure he knew what was being recorded if I was going to record something inside the class, for multiple reasons. Both, he came up in the 80s where the school got started and they experienced some stuff with recording tutorials, and then some people felt like, okay, they can just learn at home rather than go to classes. And also, I think also because I'm so willing to also sometimes take a few risks in sparring videos with weapon sparring and stuff. I think he just didn't want any accidents or something to happen and then have like the club's logo in the background.
Yeah.
But they're all cool with it. Some of them have been, a few have been on the channel, and a good portion of them have been not wanting to as well, just because of how the online community can be with a lot of emphasis on negativity and a lot of sometimes trolls and sometimes constructive negative feedback as well, but not everyone wants to put themselves out there.
It's interesting because one of the reasons I asked that is that there's some schools who don't want to be on camera because they don't want people seeing their like more secret techniques or their way of teaching. But it looks like your kung fu school doesn't have that kind of ego. It's mostly about safety and just, some of them don't want to be public. It's not about, oh, we have these secret techniques that we don't want other people to see. Because I've gone to schools where the people even show me some stuff privately. I'm like, this is really cool. You should put it on camera. Like, no, we don't want everyone knowing about this stuff. And part of me is like, I kind of get it. But part of me is like, I don't get it. So I always like asking that just to see how different schools approach that question. But it looks like your school doesn't have that kind of like, oh, we have these techniques. We don't want other people seeing it. And it's mostly they're worried about safety. And they don't want students, for example, to train it by themselves incorrectly. And, so, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to ask that question.
Yeah. And I have some recordings, especially in some of my older videos, which were recorded at the Kung Fu Quan, typically after classes, because I never felt comfortable like having a distracting element during practice, like even asking the instructor whether I could film during classes.
Yeah.
And also then you need to know whether the people, whether every attendee of the class is up with suddenly appearing online somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I just haven't recorded much there. And I really wish I had the chance to do it in Krav Maga classes, but I was both modest, being just a complete rookie, just starting out there, and I also didn't want to like have to ask every student how they felt about whether I could share it online. But that would have been so cool to be able to share the Krav Maga stuff, because that was typically involving multiple attackers and rubber knives and all kind of stuff, which is a bit difficult to set up for a YouTube video. Then you would need to get like 5 people involved, and yeah.
Wow. We're currently in this unfortunate lockdown situation, but what were some of your next martial arts to explore, to spar, to train potentially, and other collabs, etc.?
Yeah. I haven't planned that much ahead, but I knew I wanted to try and set up 2 fights this year. And so those have been postponed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And when I'm talking about setting up fights, I'm not thinking about competing in an official tournament, because at this point, as a father, I'm not able to train like in a fight camp sort of thing. I'm actually training less with sparring and other people right now over the past 6 months than I used to. Mm-hmm. And even back in the days, I was rarely training as intensively as you would preparing for a fight. Like I had my kickboxing debut fight, and for that I tried to approach it like a fight camp, where I was my own coach and I was just training a ton and going to a lot of kickboxing classes at the MMA gym where I'm training Rumble Sports to try and prepare. But it's most of my training at the moment is solo, because then I can figure out when my son is asleep and when I'm not needed around the house. So it's difficult to meet up with people. But to answer your question, there were these 2 fights I've been thinking about setting up. One is against for sure less experienced martial artist whom I already faced in an amateur MMA fight with C-class rules, so that means heavy emphasis on safety. And I was going to face him in a kickboxing fight, because I felt like that would be a new experience and even safer with like the thicker gloves, the kickboxing gloves for amateurs. And I was going to share that. So hopefully we can get that done, and we're going to try and actually raise some money for charity doing these things, because he's a YouTuber as well and has an audience.
I see. So besides making awesome videos on YouTube, are you one of those YouTubers with a day job, or is YouTube your full-time thing?
Yeah, I have a day job.
Mhm.
I work as a pedagogue sort of thing at in Copenhagen, in an
Mhm.
area where unfortunately there's sometimes some gang-related activities, and it's not like in the US, some places in Los Angeles and in New York, but there's I work with sometimes troubled youths, and it's that takes a lot of time, of course, and then there's the family portion, and YouTube is something I do next to this.
Mm.
When I started, I didn't have a job, and I had a lot of goals, some of which I've realized, but one of them was to turn YouTube into my job, and
Mhm.
that's no longer my ambition because I've experienced uh, a lot of really messed up things with the YouTube algorithm and stuff.
Mm.
I lost my entire channel without getting any explanation of why. Uh, and the only reason why I got it back last year was after a month or so, I was told to create a Twitter profile and get in contact with some people, and that led to me getting the channel back. But
Wow.
still, there was no explanation as to why it was happening, and it just showed that with social media, even though the sky's the limit and you can just change people's lives as well as your own, it can all be taken away.
Yeah.
Like YouTube owns the rights for whatever you put out, same with Instagram or whatever, and it can change at any moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you got your channel back, but that must have been a very, very stressful month, man. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy,
Wow.
and it
So,
felt almost kind of like destiny, because at the same time my girlfriend was pregnant, and I
oh,
knew once I became a father it was very important for me to scale down on the time I spent as a
yeah.
YouTuber.
Yeah.
uh, but I just felt so bad because it was kind of my legacy and something I wanted to share with my son, and also both on a personal level as well as for everyone who's been inspired by different videos they've come across on my channel.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I will send you after this. I'll send you. There's a way you can back up everything you have on YouTube through BitChute. So, like, even if God forbid anything happens again, you'll have everything on BitChute. So I do that with my channel. So all my videos are backed up automatically. So I can
Okay. Yeah,
send you that.
for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely that. I
I
appreciate that.
I
Thanks.
appreciate you telling me about that. I didn't even know about this because I follow you, but I check your videos once in a while. I don't check you every day, so I didn't even realize that you had like a few weeks or even a month where your channel was gone. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I wasn't able to even communicate it to anyone besides the ones following on Facebook or Instagram, because I wasn't able to log into my YouTube account.
Wow. And
And
then
yeah,
randomly, so on Twitter, you reached out to someone and then they helped you.
yeah, I
Wow.
reached out to this guy Naughty by Nature, or something like it. No Naughties allowed was his
Oh.
name, but I've since found out that apparently he's no longer able to help YouTubers, because I found out that the channel Fight Perfect TV.
Yes.
Yeah, they lost that channel actually, and I think they've given up on getting it back.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think they tried to launch a new one, and I'm not sure, but I think perhaps they've given up on that because
Yeah, that one got taken down too.
okay, that's crazy,
Yeah, so
right? And just recently I had a viral video just completely removed. It was called Kung Fu in Street Fights. It was a compilation, and I wasn't even notified by YouTube I think because of the quarantine situation with the
Mm-hmm.
virus and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
they have sent out a message that they're no longer gonna be notifying people of issues.
Wow.
So I just found out randomly that that video was gone. Yeah. So
Wow.
it just shows that a lot of stuff can happen on this platform.
Yeah. Yeah. So for viewers who wonder, I think this is a great moment. Both Michael and I should just tell viewers that we're dealing with so much behind the scenes too. And sometimes viewers request us to do a video, or viewers want to talk to us, or viewers want to get featured, and sometimes we just don't get to it. Sometimes we really are dealing with a lot, and I've dealt with stuff like that too. I had a channel of mine taken down randomly back in the day. I've had videos taken down that I've never gotten back, so I totally understand. And I think this is just asking all viewers, you know, sometimes please give us the benefit of the doubt too. It's not that
Yeah.
we're ignoring you or something. Sometimes we literally have so much going on. If we have channel strikes that we have to appeal, or we have copyright claims unfair, we have to appeal those. We have to get that stuff figured out first. So, and I think, again, I respect you even more, Michael, hearing that you've gone through all this, but like you're still sitting down and like having an interview with me. That's just awesome. Like it shows how much you care about martial arts, how much you love what you do.
Yeah, I think I can imagine you had similar experiences where you just realize what kind of impact you're making on someone just over this distance. And
Mm-hmm.
that was always my dream to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's because I'm a saint or a selfish person, because perhaps it's something with my ego that I want to help people, but I
Mm-hmm.
just love that feeling of being of value to others. And yeah, I've gotten so many messages over the years from people who like, I did a Wing Chun in MMA compilation, and then I got an email from someone who trained wrestling and Wing Chun and who was about to give up on Wing Chun. And then he saw that video and kept training it and pressure testing it more because he gained a new belief in it. And then he had a situation where he had to defend himself, and he believes it was that training and that video in some part which motivated him to keep training. So there's just so many situations where it's made a difference. But that's also the difficult part, knowing what kind of difference you can make, and also having to like set some restrictions on your time,
Yeah.
because especially as you grow, I have the type of personality where I always try to respond and help people. But then when I reach out to people or help them, then they expect me to continually
Yes.
engage in conversation. And then you have like so many followers who see you as a supporter or a mentor. And then that's going to make you a worse person on the outside to the people in your actual life.
Yeah.
Especially now as a father, I just had to cut down on comments, especially on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
I still get to respond a lot, but typically if I'm responding to comments, it's because it's while I'm at work and if it's not busy there or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a funny story where one of my cousins, she was like, she saw once in a while, like once every hour, I just check and respond to a few fans. And she'd be like, Jerry, man, you care too much about your fans. One day you're going to get a wife and you're going to care more about your fans. And I was like, yeah, that's probably true. So like you said, sometimes you have to learn to dial it back too, especially as you mature, as life happens. Like you have a son and maybe one day you're going to have another kid, another kid, another kid, right? And maybe one day you're going to have grandkids. So eventually you just have to, probably what's going to happen is I think most YouTubers that keep going for a long time, they eventually outsource a lot of their work. So like they have people respond to comments for them. They have people upload for them. They have people film for them. So ultimately, I think if we all get to that point in our lives and YouTube's still around, we'll probably be like that.
Yeah, I'd love to have like an editor, and then just be able to give some creative input.
Mm-hmm.
As far as comments, I think I'd rather, if I can help myself, just if it becomes a problem, just don't respond, because I don't want anyone else responding, and perhaps it won't reflect my values or how I really feel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think this is actually a really great stopping point, and I'm really I'm really happy that this interview took place. And I know we've been wanting to collaborate for a while. And I mean, on my end, I'll definitely look out for new videos and keep doing commentary on your stuff, and then just stay in touch, man. I just it's just so just like, sometimes, like when I talked to Icy Mike, like I heard a lot about a lot of the stuff he went through, and then we realized, wow, him and I have so much in common. Like talking to you, I didn't even realize like our YouTube journeys had so much in common. I didn't realize you had to deal with so much back end stuff. So, man,
yeah,
this is why these interviews, even though we have to wake up at weird times of the day to do them, but they're so necessary. Like we have to get to know each other, and like audiences too. I suggest people who talk to each other a lot in the comment section, both in Zen's account and in mine, just like hit up each other, like try to meet each other on Instagram, build a community. So that way it's like, if one day, God forbid, the two of us like disappear or something, it's like at least there's a community that somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, just as a viewer of your channel and a fan of fight commentary breakdowns as well, one interview I personally would love to see one day would be perhaps if you got to sit down with Quan Kicker,
Mm.
because he's one of the original OG martial arts YouTubers, and one of the several YouTubers who inspired me to start sharing my martial arts journey
Mm-hmm.
and trying to provide values for others. And unlike someone like Shane Faison, who I'm very much inspired by, Quan Kicker has been sort of forgotten about because he's had these hiatuses,
Mm-hmm.
and he's also had a lot of stuff he's had to deal with beyond from the platform YouTube, for instance. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd make for a great interview as well.
Definitely. Thank you for the recommendation. And for those of you who are watching Fight Commentary Breaks, I actually have been in touch with Quan Kicker on and off. But like Michael says, Quan takes a lot of hiatuses and stuff. So it's just like I even sort of like put him in the back of my mind until Michael glanced at him. So in fact, what I'm going to do now is that after we finish recording, I'm going to reach out to Quan Kicker immediately. So it will happen. And Michael, I appreciate you for giving me that suggestion. And for audience members, if you want anyone else on this channel, and in fact, guys, leave your comments for Michael, because I'll definitely bring him back. We have so much to talk about still. We can answer your questions, talk about other topics you want us to talk about next time. I will stop recording here. I'll still talk to you a little bit afterwards. But for those of you watching this Fight Commentary Breakdowns, Michael's channel is Zen-Dragon. I'll put that in the description, pinned comments, etc. You guys can check them out. So, Michael, thanks again for joining.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye-bye. Share this with everyone. And Fight Commentary Breakdowns viewers, please go to Michael's account.